Welcome to this release of RSpec. I think that one of the most exciting features in this release is what's called the magnetic mouse. And I think that this likely is the biggest improvement in usability that I've ever added to RSpec. Let's see what you think. First, let's look at how previous versions of RSpec worked. Here, as I move my mouse to click on a line, I have to have really steady hands of a neurosurgeon. If I've had too much coffee, I tend to overshoot and have trouble clicking on the line itself. And hovering over the elements lines, forget it. They're just too hard to hit. And while we're here, look how tiny the wavelength label is. And the elements labels, they're equally small and almost illegible. I don't know about you, but I tend to have to lean way into my monitor to read these things. Also, notice this little floating help window that shows the cursor position. Same problem, the font's too small. And also, it's so close to the mouse that it crowds the mouse itself and can actually hide the adjacent points that I might be looking for. Okay, so that's how the previous release worked. Now let's look at the new version. As I move the mouse close to the profile line, there's this small open circle that appears on the graph line. That's the magnetic mouse. You no longer have to struggle when trying to click on a line. When you see that circle, you can immediately just click on your mouse. In other words, the mouse cursor arrow doesn't have to be touching the line. Okay, let's look at another example. Once again, suppose I'm doing a linear calibration. Let's open that window. And I want to fill in this pixel value number 2. I want to click on this absorption feature. Now, of course, for best accuracy, we'd want to use the measure lines and the barycenter feature. But for a quick calibration, I just want to click on that line. With a magnetic mouse, you just get near the line and click. And even though I didn't click on the line, because the magnetic mouse circle was visible, when I clicked, the pixel value got picked up and moved over to the calibration window here. Okay, so let's look at the hydrogen element lines. You can see that hovering over these lines is dreamy easy, right? Look at that. And the floating labels, they're actually readable without getting a neck or backache leaning into your monitor. But suppose you want to get a little more control over the magnetic mouse. Well, open up the appearance window and click on this new tab labeled Cursors. Here's where you get to control the magnetism. Hey, are you feeling lazy today? Crank up that magnetism to a strength of, let's say, 100. Now look how far away my mouse is from the line when the magnetic marker appears. That's actually too much, so let's use this button to reset to default. Hey, suppose you want to enlarge the magnetic marker circle because you lost your reading glasses. Let's go up to 50. Okay, that's too weird, isn't it? Let's reset that too. And finally, you can change the shape of the circular magnetic marker to a number of other shapes using this box. And once you've set these for the profile line, you can use this button to copy them to the reference line if that's what you want to do. Now, about this floating readout here that shows the X position, we can increase its font size using this adjuster. Wow, that's a big... I can't even say it. That's a bit big, isn't it? Let's reset it. Okay, I'm going to set these label offset fields to 0 for a moment. This is the way the previous release worked. See how jammed up that label is, actually covering some of the profile line? Okay, so let's move it, say, 30 pixels to the right and then 30 pixels up. Ah, that's much better. It's still available, but it's not covering up important information. Okay, now here's another cool thing about the magnetic mouse. To show you this, first I'm going to turn on Points Display here on the Lines tab. Now, as it's always been, as I move my mouse along the line, the cursor follows along the line, right? Now I'm going to hold down the Alt key on my keyboard. As long as I hold down that Alt key, as I move my mouse, it jumps from point to point, skipping the line between the points. To be honest, I'm not exactly sure when this might be helpful. I'm hoping you'll find a use for it and you'll let us know. Oh, and by the way, if you want RSpec to always snap to points like this, instead of requiring that you hold down the Alt key, you can set that here on the Cursor tab. So now you've seen the new magnetic mouse feature. I think you'll find it just naturally makes RSpec easier to use without you doing or learning anything new. After I implemented this feature, to be honest, I was really surprised at how much easier it got to move around a profile. And I know it's going to sound like an advertisement or some sort of sales pitch, but the magnetic mouse eliminated problems that I didn't even know I had. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do.